All right, Shalom, Carl Law Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushua, Ba'Shem Kakadash, double honors to the apostle and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Shalom and salutation to brothers out here for some words of truth and sincerity. Shalom. Something gotta give is the name of this video. Something gotta give. You got a lot of companies dropping people off, executing your contracts, right? Send you back to the unemployment line. You got situations in which power grids is going out. You got situations in which you catching overdraft fees at the overdraft, and that's just the people. How about the brotherhood? You got brotherhoods, brothers that holding firm. They ain't get no Maxine. They had to leave their job. They ain't getting no super swab. They got to leave their job. The pressure's on. It's getting tight out here. Gas is up. And so something got to give. And what's going to happen is the Lord going to turn it up. Why he's going to do that is because this is the apple of his eye. See, the Lord's going to allow Esau to get to the maximum level of his hatred towards Jake. This maximum level of evil and wickedness. And that's why we always know we study in the times, man. We study in the times. Brother, in the brotherhood, brothers study the times. We know the times, man. We measure the times diligently, as the scripture tell you us to do. So we been prepared, but now we so much more ready and can see how serious the times we in are. We're not expecting some new president to come in here and change things around. We're not expecting to change the heart from our adversary and enemy Esau. They just gonna start helping us and giving us a helping hand, or restoring land and prosperity back to our people. No, we're gonna have it hard, but something's gotta give. All right, so let's get into those scriptures about what's about to give. So for the something gotta give topic, I'm gonna go into the book of Nahum, the 3rd chapter, and I'm gonna insert some of the study Bible context that's in here, just for some backdrop on what I'm reading about. So let's get into it. First, the study Bible of Nahum 3:1. It says, Nahum writes his second description of Nineveh's certain doom in the elements of a woe oracle. The initial woe is a word drawn from a lamentation for the dead. Once again, that word lamentation, it goes into the word elegy or a dirge, which means like a funeral song. So anytime you hear lamentation, just think somebody's dying, somebody about to die. All right, like Biggie said, somebody got to die. Well, that's what's going on. The whole even the subscription on the book says, on that chapter says, as Nineveh sowed, so must she reap. All right, so the ancient cities of old are likened to America in many different ways. It's spiritually the same thing coming back, the same type of idolatry is back here again, the same type of heathenism and paganism that was upholding these ancient dominant societies is back here again in America. It goes into it in verse 4, but let's get back into it. It says it constitutes a formal denunciation of the doomed city. So this place is doomed, right? You can see from verse 1, it says, woe to the bloody city, it is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departeth not. So you got the lies, you got the robbery, and the reason why Hebrew Israelites is being zeroed in on as people who, they consider us black extremists, they consider us hate groups, and they're using all the right wording to justify when they can come down on us and just put us into a group of quote unquote domestic terrorists, according to the Rex 84 plan, according to different agendas, NDAA Act that was passed within the last decade. These acts allow us to be claimed, quote unquote domestic terrorists, which leads to indefinite incarceration, indefinite detention, no habeas corpus, all your rights exonerated, what have you, extradition, the whole nine, whatever they need to do in the process of taking you out of your home, taking you away and off of the cameras and off of the streets. the time to do it is at hand for them, because the Great Awakening is happening. The Great Awakening is here, of the Israelites returning back to who they are, and the whistleblowing is even taking place simultaneously. So ultimately, they can't stop this truth from coming out. It is all full of lies. So all we're doing, basically, in a nutshell, Israelites, our job is to take down strongholds. Strongholds of false doctrines. That's a part of these lies. The fact that you can believe in any God you want to believe in, that's a lie that's being upheld by the society of America. It was no different for Nineveh, ancient Nineveh, Assyrian province, if you will, right? Or the capital city of the Assyrian captivity. And it starts by telling you that lamentation of woe. All right, so there's going to be a lot of death to come. All right, there's going to be a lot of slow singing and flower bringing for this city Nineveh, because of the blood has been shed there. All right, if you look at the history of America, in which they trying to just take out of the textbooks or rewrite, you'll see that the people, they want the people to believe in a different narrative, that America didn't have bloody origins. But we all know that's a lie. Any century or decade you look at prior to the 1900s, and even after that, it was bloody. But if you zeroing in on the early America, you're gonna see nothing but bloodshed, rape, robbery, and murder. Okay, most notably, there were people living in this land who were Israelites. They were Gadites and Reubenites, so-called Native Americans. They came here fleeing from the same Assyrian captivity that we going into about in Nahum. And they got washed over here by the troops sent over here to America. And that's why the scripture said the troops shall overcome you, because these cavalries and these troops slaughtered Native Americans. It was a famous quote by them, was kill every buffalo you see, because every buffalo means one more Indian. Or another quote, they would say, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. All right. And so there's a lot of bloody history here in America. This is part of the reason for the calling of its destruction, and the reason for this funeral songs, right? And so I'm using a comparison here of the ancient city of Nineveh to expose what's going to happen to America, because history and the scriptural history repeats itself, and cities are reestablished spiritually, recreated spiritually, right? It says in the prey part not. So you understand that a prey is the ones that seek and extorted and sicked upon and used, okay? Taken advantage of, abused. Well, the slaves that built this country up, they're still here. The natives that had this land originally, they're still here in smaller numbers, right? They say 50% of the population basically is Edomites, so-called white people, with 13 and the rest 15, and the lower numbers, so-called blacks and Latinos, Israelites and natives. So the prey is still here. We haven't departed, but that's where the Most High makes his big his grand sign of his grand deliverance, that wonder, that great wonder that's gonna happen, where he sends his son back and he delivers his elect in the most astounding fashion you could think of, using the chariots. That was the most mysterious vehicle you can think of at this point in time. It says the noise of a whip. Let me go back into the Bible dictionary real quick, or the study Bible. It says whether reporting what he has seen in a vision or merely envisioning the future scene. Nahum's portrayal of the coming battle is one of picturesque brevity using vivid images, such as in verse 2, the noise of a whip, the noise of the rattling of the wheels, of the prancing horses and of jumping chariots. The horseman lifteth up the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses, and there is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. Glittering spear is mentioned in other scriptures as well, and it references that thermonuclear missile, because as that that arrow and the spear, as that arrow shoots into the air, that tail of it and that spark from the fire beneath it propelling it is glittering. And the multitude of slain, well, that's the destruction of a place that is set on fire and set ablaze from that spear, that bright sword. These missiles get shot off, you can see them from miles away. Future prophecy, and now this is going into a time of judgment now, where everything catches up. Remember the funeral song, the woe, everything catches up to America very soon, just like it did in Nineveh. It says, in the great number of carcasses, and there is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot. Now, America is known as the great whore, or the harlot, the mother of all harlots, in the book of Revelations. And it says the mistress of witchcrafts. America is known for its witchcraft. Bohemian Grove, these pagan holidays, pagan rituals, astrology, and astronomy is big, really big here, like left hand. What goes on in Hollywood, what goes on in DC, the real occult, hidden, forbidden knowledges and occultish symbols and signs and languages that the average person doesn't understand. That's what America is built upon, founded from the time of Washington on down. That selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcraft. So these are the deeds that ancient Nineveh did that America just replicates. This witchcraft, these whoredoms, this harlotry. Right? It says, behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts. I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness and the kingdoms thy shame. So the Lord is basically showing what you have done, what you are guilty of, that he knows about, and in return he's giving you what you're begging for, right? And he's using vivid pictures to do it. Back in the study Bible, it says the word translated filth denotes something that is detested, a strong word. It is usually reserved for context dealings with aberrations connected with pagan worship. The word carries with it the idea of loathing. The thought is that despoiled Nineveh will be treated as an abominable thing. Verse 6, and I will cast abominable filth upon thee and make thee vile, and will set thee as a gazing stock. And no nation expects that as they're doing their dirt and their grime and their filth and their pagan rituals and their demonic drinking of blood and sacrificing that goes on in this country, whether you know it or not. Okay, whether you know it or not, this is a place where sacrifice happens often on a high level. And even when it's identified, nobody does anything about it. There's a black book that came from what the FBI found in Jeffrey Epstein's closet. I don't know. They found it in his house somewhere. His black books of all the names of the people who did business with him and met on his island and touched on whatever girls he had on his island. And they never once exposed one name in that book. And here you have, for the last 3 weeks, you've been bombarded with who's this guy? Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. As if this is relevant at all. When this Ghislaine Maxwell trial outing every elite pedophile in the industry is all identified in this book, and not one name gets exposed. This place is full of abominable filth, so the Lord's just going to expose it. He's going to expose it all, right? And then he's going to destroy it. It says, and it shall come to pass that all they that look upon thee shall flee from thee, and say, Nineveh is laid waste, who will bemoan her? Whence shall I seek comforts for thee? Because she will be destroyed. The Most High is going to judge her. Going back into the Bible, the context that I'm reading, the commentary for verse 8, it says, as described here, No, better known as Thebes. So those two names are interchangeable. You see here in verse 8, it says, art thou better than populous? No. That's also another name for no. That city is called Thebes. It says, we're surrounded by a strong defensive wall and a water system that included lakes, moats, canals, and the Nile. This is important because it tells you that how this city, No, this populated city of in Africa called No, had everything at one point in time. It's bringing up another city to prove another point of how when some say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes. See, the peace and safety that Americans feel comes from the armies, comes from the military, comes from the safety of 911, comes from the normalcy bias that everything has always been simple living here in America, and it will continue to be. We got protection, the feeling of being protected. Somebody's watching over our skies. Somebody's always watching over our lands and our shores. Okay, the commentary says, as the scribes here know, better known as Thebes, was surrounded by a strong defensive wall and a water system that includes lakes, moats, canals, and the Nile. In the past, Thebes has been able to boast of the help of not only all Egypt, but also in 7th century allies. Its 7th century allies, Ethiopia, Sudanese Kush, Put, perhaps the fabled land of Punt in coastal Somaliland, and Lubim, Libya. None of these, however, supplied strength and protection for Thebes at this time. Verse 8 says, art thou better than populous? No, that was situate among the rivers, that had the waters round about it, whose rampart was the sea, and her wall was from the sea. Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was infinite. Put in Lubim were thy helpers. So this city here had it all, right? It says, yet was she carried away, she went into captivity. So that's the bottom line here. That safety is a deceitful thing. It's a pride thing. You see, what city actually is stronger than the will of the Heavenly Father? You got to ask yourself that when considering if the Most High will leave this place, America, up in smoke, like it's Dr. Dre in Chronic 2000 tour. He's going to do that. What defenses does America have against outside, outer realm, extraterrestrial elite forces of Yahushua at his coming? You see? Enough for the whole world to stop fighting amongst itself and then turn and fight towards the Lord. That's what it tells you in 2nd Ezra that will happen. And still be annihilated. Yet she was carried away. She went into captivity. Her young children were also dashed in pieces at the top of all the streets. They cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound in chains. So this city, No, or Thebes, went down drastically. The children were destroyed. They took the men, honorable men, probably the top soldiers, into captivity as slaves. and along with the leaders and the princes and the kings were in chains. Cast lots for him, right? It says, thou shalt be drunken, thou shalt be hid, thou also shalt seek strength because of the enemy. All thy strongholds shall be like fig trees with the first strip figs. They shall be shaken, they shall even fall into the mouth of the eater. Behold, thy people in the midst of thee are women. And the Most High uses this analogy a lot to show you a fall of an empire is when the men turn into women, moan and cry and have an emotional breakdown, and their testosterone, their masculinity is eradicated. Their reason and their confidence and their boldness is washed away, and what's left is the shell of a man, but the mind and the tears of a woman. The Most High is able to do that. It says, the gates of thy land shall be set wide open unto thine enemies, and the fire shall devour thy bars. So the Most High knows how to take a nation down. He just knows. He's done it repeatedly through history. We got to understand, we've been here many times before. So this lifetime is just this lifetime. Okay? But we're using history that predates and shows the same examples of what the Most High's power is over and over again. He's done it. And one day to us is 1 year to, 1 day to the Lord is 1,000 years to man. It's in the book of Peters. So these events that we're reading about in Nahum, where he's prophesying of Nineveh, and they were like 2 or 3 days ago for him. So it's nothing for him to put that on a repeat, and he will. He'll showcase his talents in America's downfall, as he's doing now. It says in verse 14, and real quick, let me just read back to the Bible dictionary. This is the last part that they have on it, or the Bible commentary. Excuse me. It says, these verses form the second portion of an extended taunt, songs that function as satire. You see that? See how the Most High will taunt? See how he uses his prophets to taunt you? There's a scripture that says, I will laugh at that calamity. You see how he uses his men to do that? It says, Nahum's sarcasm is evident throughout. He prophesies that Nineveh's enemy will sweep through the city like a horde of devouring locusts. Nineveh's merchants and officials flee, and her sleeping leaders are compared to shepherds who have nodded off to sleep and allowed the sheep, the Ninevites, to be scattered in flight or in exile. The choice of this motif as the final one for the book may suggest, as many commentaries have observed, that the sleep or slumber of the shepherds officials is death. Nahum predicts the burning of the city, a fact confirmed by archaeological excavation. Nahum's emphasis on the destruction of Nineveh's temples is also confirmed by excavations. Minute details concerning the events of the final days before Nineveh's fall, such as the drunkenness, cowardice, degeneracy, and desertion of the city by its leadership, are also abundantly recorded in the ancient traditions. Nahum's prophecies concerning the final slaughter of Nineveh's citizens and the looting of the city, its utter destruction, and the virtual disappearance of his people are facts confirmed in the ancient records. Nahum's words have been dramatically precise in their fulfillment. They find corroboration in the findings of archaeologists who note the hasty strengthening of the walls at strategic defensive positions. They can tell by archaeological digs that when they find the relics of ancient Nineveh that was burned down, that in the areas in which the defense positions of the walls, it looks as if they spent little to no time fortifying the walls, as if they needed to do that rapidly. Like the enemy is right outside the gate, let's seal it up. And so you can see when something's done hastily as opposed to doing, and that's how in depth the archaeological digs and findings were. You know, when you know what you're looking for, you find it, right? Or, you know what you're looking for. And that's the proof in the digs. These things, the records of the scriptures is true concerning Nineveh and many others. It says the fall of the city due to water has been attested both by archaeologists, and ancient historians. Usually heavy rains were known to have given difficulty to Nineveh, which was served by 3 rivers, the Tigris, the Kausar, and Tibiltu. A high water season and a sudden storm accompanied by a swelling of any or all 3 rivers would account for the fulfillment of Nahum's prophecy. So this city, Nineveh, got hit in many different ways. Armies, nations, waters, fire. The Most High made a serious example out of ancient Nineveh. Now, let's read where we left off in verse 14. Draw thee waters for the siege, fortify thy strongholds, go into clay and tread the mortar, make strong the brickling, meaning prepare it, get it ready. Remember, this is the Lord using a taunt. This is all taunting language. Understand the Most High got a sense of humor when he destroys people. Right? The fire devour thee, the sword shall cut thee off, it shall eat thee up like a cankerworm. Make thyself many as the cankerworm, make thyself many as the locusts. Thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. The cankerworm spoileth and flieth away. The crowned are as locusts, and the captains are as great grasshoppers, which camped in the hedges in the cold day, but when the sun ariseth, they flee away, and their place is not known where they are. So there was a great scattering of the people, apparently. Thy shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria, thy nobles shall dwell in the dust, thy people is scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathereth them. So you can see all out chaos happen in Nineveh. Imagine that. Imagine what it's going to be like here in America, because it says there shall be in Micah that the end of this place, there shall be no other time from the beginning of time that is as worse as the time to come. So in comparison, Nineveh is going to be like a stroll in Disneyland. All right, it's going to be like a Netflix special in comparison to what happens here in America. And they were scattering for their lives with their children being dashed to pieces in their, so forth and so on. Verse 18, thy shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria, thy nobles shall dwell in the dust. Thy people is scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathereth them. There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. All that hear the bruit of thee shall clap their hands over thee. So there's going to be a great mocking going on, right? Because judgment, not because people is just demons, but it's judgment. You hear great Nineveh, or that witchcraft city, that city that is full of lies and robbery, that city that the prey departeth not. You hear about that city falling and you celebrate something of, so when the bad guy dies in a movie or the villain dies, and that's when America will be looked at in future realms, in the kingdom of heaven, and all future kingdoms and provinces and all peoples will always remember what America really stood for, similar to what Nineveh stood for: witchcrafts, harlotry, and whoredoms, lies and robbery, the bloody city, America. It says, of thee clap the hands, of thee shall clap the hands over thee, for upon whom hath not thy wickedness passed continually? So it is prophesied, and it is done. It is prophesied already by America. It will be done. It shall be done. What you sow, you shall reap. And these are the judgments that's sent from on high. They have nothing to do with what we decide we want. They're what we want, because we are on the side of victory and the side of justice, the side of the avenging of the children of Israel. But it's higher than us. It's the words of the Heavenly Father that say the Bible. And we stand by it firmly, knowing it's going to come true. So Lord willing, this video is edifying. Till next time, shalom.